Her voice was flat, almost rehearsed. "Mark, this meeting is about your conduct." I blinked, confused. HR had called me in on short notice with no explanation. The blinds were half closed. The air felt thick and heavy. Across the table, my manager Tina Brooks slid a folder toward me. Inside were 3 pages of typed accusations. Claims I'd never heard before. Behavior I'd never displayed. And at the bottom, a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. My stomach dropped. Heat rose up my neck. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely steady. No one answered right away. The HR rep, a woman named Valerie Morse, just crossed her arms and stared at me with cold eyes. "We'll need your response in writing by the end of business tomorrow." My world tilted. I looked at Tina. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I understood. My own boss was framing me for harassment. Please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you are listening from. My name is Mark Weston, and this is how HR tried to destroy me, until I used their own rulebook to end them. I walked out of that room in a daze. My legs felt weak. My hands were shaking. The hallway seemed longer than usual. My coworkers avoided eye contact as I passed their desks. Some pretended to be deep in their computer screens. Others suddenly found their phones fascinating. I didn't know what hurt more, the accusation itself, or the fact that everyone seemed to believe it already. No one asked if I was okay. No one looked confused or surprised. It was like they'd been expecting this. That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 2 hours. I couldn't bring myself to drive home yet. I replayed every word from that meeting. Every cold look Valerie had given me. Every fake smile Tina had worn for months. And then it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been planned. Carefully. Methodically. Someone had been building a case against me for weeks, maybe months. But who? And why? What had I done to deserve this? 6 months earlier, everything had been normal. I was the go-to guy for training new hires. I'd been with the company for 8 years. I knew the systems inside and out. I knew the clients. I knew the culture. When Alyssa Warren joined the marketing team, fresh out of college with bright eyes and nervous energy, I volunteered to show her the ropes. She was eager but clumsy. She made mistakes. Small ones at first, missed deadlines, formatting errors, confused client names. Nothing major. Nothing that couldn't be fixed. I covered for her. I helped her correct reports before they went out. I taught her shortcuts and warned her about difficult clients. She'd always smile gratefully and say, "You're saving my job, Mark. I owe you big time." I brushed it off. That's what teammates did, right? Help each other. Build each other up. I had no idea those words would come back to destroy me. I had no idea that kindness could be twisted into something ugly. Looking back now, I should have seen the warning signs. But I was too busy trying to be helpful. What I didn't know then was that Alyssa was close friends with Tina outside of work. Best friends, actually. They'd known each other since college. They went out for drinks after hours. They had weekend brunches together. They posted photos on social media with cute captions about work wives and friendship goals. I only found this out later. At the time, I just thought Tina was being supportive of a new hire. So when Alyssa's report to a high-profile client went missing and the account almost got dropped, I assumed there would be consequences. The client had called our director personally, furious. The report had been due 3 days earlier. Alyssa had promised it was done. It wasn't. When our director demanded answers, Tina didn't blame Alyssa. She blamed me. I laughed at first when she pulled me aside. I thought it was a misunderstanding. "Tina, I wasn't even on that project," I said. Her expression didn't change. "You were supposed to be supervising her work." "Supervising? I was just helping her learn that exactly. You were responsible." It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision. At the next staff meeting, Tina made her move. We were all gathered in the conference room. coffee cups, laptops open. The usual Monday morning atmosphere. Then Tina stood up, holding a printed report, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "We've had some issues with documentation lately. Mark, maybe you can explain why deadlines are slipping?" The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. My face burned. My throat went dry. I tried to speak, but my voice came out shaky. "I don't know what you mean. My projects are all on schedule." "Are they?" She raised an eyebrow. "Because I'm seeing a pattern of missed commitments and poor communication." Someone snickered. Others looked away. I sat there, frozen, feeling smaller by the second. This was public humiliation disguised as accountability. She was planting seeds of doubt in front of everyone, making them question my competence, my reliability, my value. And it worked. After that meeting, people looked at me differently. Like I was slipping. Like I was becoming a problem. The worst part? I had no idea how to fight back. Things got worse fast. Emails that used to include me suddenly didn't. Projects I'd been leading for months suddenly had new points of contact. Calendar invites disappeared. Meeting notes excluded my input. People stopped asking me to lunch. The break room went quiet when I walked in. I felt like I was becoming invisible. Or worse, like I was being erased. I tried talking to Tina directly. "Is there something wrong? Did I do something to upset you?" She smiled that fake smile. "Of course not, Mark. You're doing fine. Just keep up the good work." But her actions said the opposite. I filed a quiet complaint with HR. I kept it professional. I explained that I felt I was being excluded from projects without explanation. That communication had broken down. 2 weeks later, Valerie from HR called me in. "We reviewed your complaint," she said, not looking up from her notes. "We didn't find any evidence of improper conduct. Did you talk to anyone? Did you check the email trails? We conducted a thorough review." That was it. No follow-up. No mediation. Nothing. 2 months later, when I asked for a copy of my complaint, they said they couldn't find it. It had been lost in a system update. That's when I knew. HR wasn't neutral. They weren't protecting employees. They were protecting Tina. 3 months after that first meeting, they called me into HR again. This time, Valerie had a thick folder. She slid it across the table with a practiced smile. "Mark, we need to put you on a performance improvement plan." My chest tightened. A PIP was usually the first step toward termination. Everyone knew that. I opened the folder. Inside were pages of complaints. Communication concerns. Negative tone in emails. Resistance to feedback. Failure to meet team expectations. None of it was true. None of it was documented. But there it was, typed and official looking. "I've never received any of this feedback before," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's why we're addressing it now. But you can't put me on a PIP without. The plan is already approved. You have 60 days to show improvement." I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to tell them this was garbage. Instead, I took a slow breath, signed the document, and walked out. Because something inside me had shifted. They wanted me to be emotional, defensive, angry. That would make it easier to justify firing me. I decided to be something else. Strategic. That night, I went home and printed out the entire employee handbook. All 86 pages. I'd never read it cover to cover before. Most people didn't. It was boring. Full of legal language and policy jargon. But if they wanted to play by the rules, I needed to know every single one. I read it 3 times. I highlighted sections. I made notes in the margins. And on page 42, I found something. A small clause buried in the disciplinary action section. All formal disciplinary actions require a documented mediation session between the employee manager and HR prior to issuing a written warning or performance improvement plan. They had skipped that step. There had been no mediation. No formal sit-down. No attempt at resolution. They'd gone straight to the PIP. That was a violation of their own policy. It was small. Maybe even insignificant to most people. But to me, it was a crack in their armor. And I intended to make it a canyon. That tiny oversight would become my weapon. I started documenting everything. Every email. Every meeting. Every conversation. I kept a private journal with dates, times, and exact quotes. When Tina gave me a directive, I followed up with an email summarizing what she'd said. Just to confirm, you wanted me to prioritize Project X over Project Y, correct? She hated it. But she couldn't say no without looking unreasonable. I created a timeline of every interaction. Cold. Factual. No emotion. Just data. When she contradicted herself, I noted it. When she blamed me for something that wasn't my responsibility, I noted it. When she praised Alyssa for work I'd actually done, I noted it. On paper, I looked composed. Cooperative. Professional. Inside, I was falling apart. I barely slept. I lost weight. My wife asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was building a case. And they had no idea. 3 weeks later, another incident appeared. A client complaint. It showed up in my file without warning. The complaint claimed I'd been rude on a phone call. Dismissive. Unprofessional. The problem? The call never happened. I checked my phone logs. My calendar. My email history. I'd never spoken to that client. When I brought this up to Valerie, she just shrugged. The complaint was submitted anonymously. We have to take all complaints seriously. But it's not real. I can prove I never talked to them. You need to understand the seriousness of this, Mark. I nodded slowly. Pulled out my notebook. Wrote down the exact date and time of this conversation. Wrote down what she'd said. Her facial expression. The way she dismissed my evidence without even looking at it. I wasn't defending myself anymore. I was collecting evidence. Every lie they told was another piece of ammunition. They were building a case against me. But I was building a better one against them. Tina started sending late-night emails. Always CCINGHR. Always twisting small interactions into something sinister. One email claimed I'd raised my voice during a team meeting. That I'd been aggressive and confrontational. The problem? That meeting had been virtual. And it had been recorded. Our company automatically recorded all video meetings for compliance purposes. I went into the system and downloaded the recording before anyone could delete it. I watched it 3 times. My voice had been calm the entire time. I'd disagree with the strategy, sure. But I'd been respectful. Measured. Professional. Tina, on the other hand, had cut me off twice. Had dismissed my points without discussion. On camera, she was the one who looked aggressive. I saved the video to 3 different locations. My personal laptop. A USB drive. And a cloud storage account they didn't know about. One file at a time, her lies were piling up. But not in the way she thought. They were piling up in my favor. Out of nowhere, I got a message. It was from Chris Navarro, someone I barely knew. He worked in a completely different department. We'd maybe spoken twice in 8 years. His message was short. Hey, I think you're being set up. Can we talk? We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Chris looked nervous. He kept glancing at the door. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, he said. But I heard Tina talking to Alyssa last week in the break room. She said HR was getting rid of you quietly. That it was almost done. My blood went cold. Did she say why? Something about you being a liability. That you knew too much or something. I don't know. But Mark, they've been planning this for months. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. It was from an internal chat between Alyssa and another coworker. The message read, Tina says Mark's gone by the end of quarter. Finally. I stared at that screenshot for a long time. They hadn't just been undermining me. They'd been actively plotting my termination. And HR was helping them do it. After that conversation with Chris, something changed in me. I stopped reacting. In meetings, I was polite, brief, unshakable. When Tina tried to bait me with passive-aggressive comments, I just nodded and moved on. When Valerie called me in for another check-in, I answered every question calmly and took detailed notes. Tina hated it. She wanted me to be defensive. She wanted me to be emotional. She wanted me to snap so she could point and say, "See? He's unstable." Instead, I was surgical. Every move she made, I logged. Every lie she told, I cross-referenced with company policy. I stopped trying to convince anyone I was innocent. I stopped trying to defend myself at that moment. I was playing a longer game now. She thought my silence meant defeat. It didn't. It meant calculation. And she had no idea what was coming. 2 months into the PIP, HR scheduled what they called a final review. Valerie smiled too much when I walked in. Tina sat beside her, arms folded, looking smug. "This is a chance to turn things around," Valerie said in that fake supportive voice. I knew what that meant. This was their endgame. They were going to fire me. They had the documentation, the PIP, the complaints, the pattern of per performance. It was all lined up. I read through the papers they gave me. There was a section referencing previous mediation sessions to address concerns. I paused. Looked up. "What mediation sessions?" Valerie blinked. "The ones prior to your PIP. There were no mediation sessions." "Of course there were. Show me the documentation." She looked uncomfortable. Flipped through her folder. "It should be here somewhere." "It's not. Because it never happened." Tina cut in. "Mark, let's not get bogged down in procedural details." I smiled. Signed the paper. But I made sure to start right next to that section. The section that referenced mediation that never occurred. That false documentation was exactly what I needed. I spent the entire weekend assembling everything. My dining room table was covered in papers. Printed emails with timestamps. Screenshots of recorded meetings. Highlighted sections of the employee handbook. My signed PIP with the fraudulent mediation reference. Chris's screenshot of the chat. Notes from every conversation. I organized it all chronologically. I created a table of contents. I cross-referenced every claim they'd made against me with evidence showing it was false. The document I created was 47 pages long. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't a rant. It was clinical. Methodical. Devastating. Every lie they told was listed. Every policy they'd violated was cited. Every piece of evidence was dated and sourced. I read through it 5 times, checking for any weakness. There was none. This wasn't just a defense. This was a prosecution. And I was ready to file it. Monday morning, I drafted one email. The subject line read, "Formal ethics concern, policy violations by HR and management." I didn't send it to Valerie. I didn't send it to Tina. I sent it to Corporate Compliance, the department that oversaw HR from the regional office. I CC'd the legal department. I attached my 47-page document. In the body of the email, I kept it short. "I am reporting multiple violations of company policy, fabrication of disciplinary records, and retaliation. All evidence is attached. I am available to discuss at your earliest convenience." I read it one more time. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I did this, there was no going back. This would either save me or destroy me. I took a breath. And clicked send. Then I sat back. And waited. 2 days later, HR went silent. No emails. No meetings. No check-ins. The office felt strange. Tense. On Wednesday morning, an all-staff email appeared in everyone's inbox. The subject line read, "Internal Compliance Review." The message was brief. It stated that an internal review was being conducted and that all employees should continue normal operations. It didn't say what the review was about. But I knew. I sat at my desk, pretending to work, watching the office buzz with speculation. People whispered in huddles. Managers looked stressed. Tina stayed in her office with the door closed. She didn't look at me once. Not even a glance. That's when I knew. She knew it was coming. She knew someone had pulled the thread. And now the whole thing was unraveling. A week later, I got a call from corporate compliance. A calm voice on the other end said, "Mr. Weston, we've received your report. We'd like to meet with you privately to clarify some details." They flew in 2 investigators from the regional office. We met in a borrowed conference room away from the main building. I brought a USB drive with everything backed up. They asked questions for 3 hours. I answered each one calmly, referencing specific documents. Then I handed them the USB drive. "This has all the recordings, emails, and policy references. Everything is labeled." One of the investigators, a woman named Paula, plugged it into her laptop. She opened the video file of the meeting where Tina claimed I'd been aggressive. She watched it twice. When it finished, she looked at her colleague. He nodded. Paula turned to me. "This changes everything." Her voice was quiet. Almost sad. Like she'd seen this kind of thing before and hated that it kept happening. Rumors started spreading fast. Alyssa stopped showing up to the office. No one knew if she'd quit, been fired, or was just avoiding the situation. Tina looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She chain-drank coffee in her glass-walled office, staring at her computer screen. Valerie, the HR rep who dismissed my concerns, suddenly went on leave. No explanation. Just an email saying she'd be out indefinitely. People started looking at me differently. Not with pity anymore. With curiosity. With something that looked almost like respect. I kept my head down. I didn't gossip. I didn't gloat. I just did my work and waited. They were unraveling. And I was still standing. 2 weeks after my meeting with corporate compliance, I was called in again. This time, it was just Paula and the head of legal. No Tina. No Valerie. No local HR. Paula looked me in the eye and said, "Mr. Weston, we want to thank you for your professionalism during what we recognize has been an incredibly difficult time." I nodded. She continued, "Our investigation has confirmed multiple policy violations. Fabricated records. Retaliation. Failure to follow proper procedures." "What happens now?" I asked. "That's still being determined. But we wanted to ask you, do you wish to submit a formal grievance for retaliation and harassment?" I thought about it. I could push. I could demand consequences. I could make them pay. But I was tired. I just wanted the truth documented. "No," I said. "I just want the record corrected. I want it clear that the accusations against me were false." Paula nodded. "That will be done." Within a week, everything shifted. The HR department had resigned. No announcement. No farewell email. Just gone. An internal memo appeared in everyone's inbox. It stated that Tina Brooks had departed the company effective immediately to pursue other opportunities. No details. No explanation. No goodbye party. Just silence. People whispered. Theories flew. But no one knew the full story except me. And I wasn't talking. It felt strange. Almost anticlimactic. I'd been preparing for some big confrontation. Some dramatic showdown. But it didn't happen that way. They just disappeared. Quietly. Like they'd never been there at all. Part of me felt relieved. Another part felt sad. Not for them. But for how unnecessary all of this had been. A new HR lead was brought in from another regional office. Her name was Monica Palmer. She seemed competent. Professional. No fake smiles. She called me into her office on her third day. "Mr. Weston, I've reviewed your file. I want to formally apologize on behalf of the company for what you went through. I nodded. Thank you. We'd like to offer you full reinstatement. Back pay for the time you were improperly placed on the PIP. A clear record. And a promotion if you're interested. It was everything I should have wanted. Vindication. Compensation. Recognition. But as I sat there, I realized something. I didn't want to stay. Not anymore. I reached into my bag and pulled out a letter. I slid it across the table. I appreciate the offer. But I'm resigning. Monica blinked. May I ask why? I smiled. Because I can't work somewhere I don't trust. She nodded slowly. Picked up the letter. On the back, I'd printed a quote from the employee handbook. The one they'd violated. My small act of poetic justice. I walked out of that building for the last time with nothing but a small box of personal items. A coffee mug. A picture frame. A notebook. The sun was bright. The air was cool. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, feeling lighter than I had in months. No anger. No bitterness. Just relief. I could breathe again. I could sleep again. I could stop looking over my shoulder. People walked past me, rushing into the building I was leaving. They had no idea what had happened inside those walls. They had no idea that one person's quiet resistance had taken down an entire corrupt system. And that was fine. I didn't need them to know. I knew. And that was enough. A month later, I got a call from a recruiter. Mr. Weston, your name came up in a conversation with some folks at Corporate Compliance. They spoke very highly of you. Said you handled a difficult situation with exceptional integrity. I laughed. Integrity. The same thing they'd tried to destroy. The same thing they'd weaponized against me. Now it is being used as a recommendation. They said you'd be a great fit for a senior compliance role we're trying to fill. It's with a different company. Better pay. Better culture. Are you interested? I thought about it. A fresh start. A place where my skills would be valued. Where honesty wasn't a liability. Yes, I said. I'm very interested. 2 weeks later, I accepted the offer. The irony wasn't lost on me. They tried to silence me for knowing too much. Now I was being hired specifically because I knew how to hold people accountable. Looking back now, I realized something important. I didn't ruin anyone's career. Their arrogance did that. Their lies did that. I just refused to be silent. I didn't fight them with emotion. I didn't fight them with anger. I fought them with their own rules. They built walls of policy and procedure to protect themselves. But they forgot that walls work both ways. They forgot that someone might actually read the fine print. They tried to silence me with their rulebook. So I learned the rulebook better than they ever did. And when the time came, I used it to dismantle everything they built. Not with a sledgehammer. With a scalpel. Precise. Surgical. Irreversible. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's just knowing the rules better than the people trying to break them. My name is Mark Weston. And that's how I beat HR at their own game.